Well, I started putting these back together. This is a really pretty simple design. Each gearbox is bolted together with those hex bolts, like I said. And I didn't take the very end one apart down here because I didn't need to take it off the gearbox. So I went back and I started right here taking these bolts loose. The only bad part is that there's not enough clearance between these ears to get an impact in there. So you got to use breaker bar and a ratchet, and they don't come off very nice. This particular spacer is the one that I had a hole that was cut in there from evidently a knife got bent or whatever and poked a hole in it, so I welded that up. Back here there's 2 carriage bolts that go in these holes. Well, there's 8 of those that hold this whole cutter bar on. And the service manual says take 2 floor jacks, put one at this end, one down here, and then zip your 8 bolts off, slide it out to the outer edge about 4 inches, and that will disengage your drive shaft that runs inside all these. And then you just lower the whole thing to the floor and work on it all as one unit. Well, I didn't need to do that. So I'm putting it together, each piece segments, and trying to be careful on how I do this. But I started taking inventory of my parts that I've got all laid out up here and numbered and everything. And I was coming up that I had an extra part. It was that bushing, that alignment bushing that goes in between the spacer and the gearbox. So I went back and loosened everything all up, and sure enough I found between this gearbox and this spacer, I forgot to put that in there. So kicked myself, you know. Luckily I caught it now instead of when I had it all together. But when I did that, I had this off, slid it out about 4 inches, put that in there, and I just happened to look, and inside this spacer, it's full of grease, but I found a broken part of another drive shaft floating around in there. It's been in there a while because it's been rubbing on stuff here and whatever else is in there, but I don't know how many times this has been bent and broke and whatnot. But here's our new replacement gearbox, and it says basically you can do it this way, put it together in segments. All they say is that when you go to put the drive shaft back in, you know, I'll be out here, you feed it in and it goes in. It should go in just by pushing it by hand. Don't beat it with a hammer or anything. And if it comes to any sort of restriction or gets hard on you, go to the point where the shaft is, loosen up these bolts, readjust things a little bit, get it to slide through nice, and then continue on and retighten these. Now I'm only putting these on a little over finger tight. I put a ratchet on them and just snug them a little bit. The torque spec for these, I thought the book said 185 foot-pounds. So I'll go back and redo all that once I get it all hung and everything. I did order, or I got new carriage bolts for all the hangers just to be safe. I got that last gearbox hung. Well, then I went to get the next spacer that goes mates to it, and here whoever previously owned it had patched a hole in it. But I looked inside there and there's a little nubbin sticking down in there. So I'm gonna try to get a file or something down inside there and knock that off there so that it can't hit the drive shaft or wear on it. I don't recall the shaft that I pulled out having any wear marks on it in that area, but just to make myself feel better, I want to try to clean that up a little bit, and then we can proceed on with number 5 gearbox. And that one I left the spacer tied to it. You'll notice that this spacer has the 2 ears with 2 bolt holes in it. That's where the carriage bolts go through to hold this to the main frame. I think it's about every other one has that. So yeah, this thing's seen some better days. It's had a rough life. slowly going together. Hey, we're back here in the shed this morning. Saturday. It's been about a week or so since I worked on this hay bine, but parts all came in. I got it back together. I just ran it. Worked pretty good. Nothing came flying out. Nothing hit each other. I'm pretty impressed. But I'll show you here. I put all new rock guards on. I should have ordered the skids that go underneath these. I'm going to have to do that before spring. I did a little patching back in that corner. There was a hole there. Which one was it? This one here is our new one. It went in pretty good. I retimed them all. I checked the backlash on the gear sets to make sure those were in tolerance. Those two there spin the same direction each other, so you have to have that one timed just a little bit ahead of this one. And then the rest of them spin opposite. So you have to watch your knives when you put that back together. And then this corner here is also that way, that this one here spins toward the rollers. This one here spins clockwise. So they could strike if they got out of time. That's why they're clocked opposite each other. I tried to put a little more spring pressure on the float springs, but they're froze up, so I can't get any more. It takes about 45 pounds of force to lift on this corner. That's what the book says. It should take between 35 and 40 when you pick on here to get that to bounce. I wanted to put a little more on just because it seemed like it was scuffing on the wear pads a little hard. But everything's back together. I think we'll be good. The neighbor that has the pasture adjoining mine stopped over, and they're combining beans, and they're going to be starting on corn, and they have a hay field that they want to plow up. So he asked me if I would cut that and probably bale it for them. That'll be coming up here in a week, this coming week, I believe. We had our first frost night before last, so everything's should be dying off now, and they'll be going hard on corn pretty soon. But anyway, I wanted to. Oh, there's one last thing. I discovered after having my cutter bar all bolted together and everything was good, and I just had to torque everything down is all I had left. And I got reading my book for the torque spec, and I came across the diagram for these gearboxes again. Well, when you replace your bearings, I remember earlier in this video I described the snap ring and the cover plate and this little that little cover goes in front of this little pressure spring. Well, that goes on this side. When you replace your bearing, you take all that out over here, and then this shaft will slide this way, exposing this bearing. Over here, you have a snap ring and another cover, but you have 3 shims. They look like, to me, they remind me of rings on a piston. They got little spacers, and all that does is shim up the side slop on your tolerances for your gears. Well, when I got that new gearbox, I had to flip this from this side over to this side to make it spin the same direction that I needed it. And when I put it all back together, I didn't think anything of it, didn't know any different. I didn't have those spacers on the right side, so I tore everything apart and checked, and sure enough, I had to take it back apart, take the snap ring out, swap stuff from side to side, and then it was right. So I put it back together. And then we went on to torque everything down, and it worked. I bought a new drive shaft from our weld shop here in town, put that in, slid right in just like it was supposed to by hand. You didn't have to tap it into the gears or anything. So, but yeah, I just wanted to do a conclusion to this, and the first time I go cutting with it, I guess I'll probably make another little video and show it working again. But I hope this isn't going to be too long for people not to want to watch it to the end, but hopefully it helps somebody if it can. Because I sure didn't know what I was doing until I started tearing into it. But like I said, having the service manual is almost a must. I mean, it just gives you all your torque specs and all the little fine details to doing this that you wouldn't know or wouldn't have if you didn't have that. And these call, I'll keep jumping around here, but anyway, these call for Epo Grease. It's a real thin grease, goes in these gearboxes. And I went to my New Holland dealer in town, and they didn't know what I was talking about. All they had was cornhead grease. It's the same stuff that's used in John Deere cornheads, New Holland. But if you read the fine print on the back of this box, it's EPO. It's pretty universal. I think it's like $3 a tube. And I wouldn't have had to buy a whole case. I think I did all the gearboxes, brought them up to the level they're supposed to be, and I might have used 2 tubes, 3 tubes, I don't know. So it's not that expensive. And as long as nothing is leaking, it shouldn't really take much every year. They do say this is something you're supposed to do annually in the spring before season, is take your turtles off, open those up, check your grease level, and you take a screwdriver and you put it underneath underneath this tube, wedge it under here, and you can wiggle that and see if there's any slop in your bearings, and that'll tell you if you got a bearing going out or getting sloppy. So anyway, yeah, this is getting way too long. Have a good weekend. I hope everybody's harvest is going well. Stay safe, and hit the like button if you like. Subscribe. I do a video every now and then. Take care. Thanks.